And you're live.
Hi, it's Mike Zipser from Fast Forward with another live Zoom Fast Forward thingy. And with me, this, I don't know, we don't have a name for this
That's the technical term is thingy.
thingy. And with me is the amazing Nalo Hopkinson, as she knows, one of my favorite writers. and, and she's with us from California. And welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mike. It's been ages.
Yeah, I know. And without conventions going on, I don't see you anymore.
Yeah.
So how are things out in Riverside with all this?
Well, Riverside is by Toronto standards a very small town. And so having been here almost 9 years now, I've found that kind of chafing, but now it turns out to be a good thing, at least in these conditions. It's relatively quiet. Not a whole lot of people walk, so going for walks, you don't see a whole lot of people. Um, at the university where I'm at, I think maybe 2 people have come down with the coronavirus. Um, it's, I'm not going to say it's good because there's all kinds of things happening, and a lot of the people who are homeless or precariously housed or precariously jobbed, we're seeing tent villages growing. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's rough, and that's just not safe for them.
No,
You know,
it's not
and
safe for them at all.
there's nothing else they can do.
No, there isn't, and yeah, it's quite depressing actually.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so you, like you said, you are a professor at university, and so I assume you've been doing the distance learning thing.
We had about, if you don't count exams, 2 weeks to pivot to flip all our classes to online. And that was, there were moments where I could feel my head trying to explode. I could feel my blood pressure going up, but a colleague helped me set it up. Because of course I've taught online before, but I've never had to build the architecture of the course before. And the online system the University of California uses is difficult to decipher, let's just say. So, but it's been going for about 5 weeks now. I've been teaching online. Students do most of everything whenever they are free. We meet once a week for an optional meeting that's just sort of checking in and seeing each other's faces and hearing each other's voices, and for any questions about the material they have that weren't otherwise answered. But it's weird. Like, this has become all one long day. I don't know how it is for you, but it feels like this is the longest day ever, and I keep forgetting what day and time it is.
Yeah, a number of my friends who are teleworking say that they're working longer hours than they did when they were going into the office because there's no end point.
Yeah. Well, being having been a working writer for so many years, I'm used to that.
Yeah, you're used. Yeah, that's kind of your life, isn't it?
Yeah. So my end point happens when my brain says, "Enough. Let's go watch some really bad fantasy TV now."
Well, how are you finding the time between, the teaching and the distance learning and all the stuff going on with that, and then how are you breaking your day up to make sure you have time to write? Because you're still writing House of Whispers, right?
I handed it in actually just before we all had to go into lockdown. I handed in the last one.
Oh, just so you
Yeah.
know, the last one I got was number 18.
Okay, so I think 20 is out. The very last one is going to be 22, and the artists are working on that one now.
Yeah, I think in a couple of weeks I'll probably get a couple of them because my comic store, it's on my pull list at the comic store, but they're not getting any new comics until mid-May or something.
Yeah,
And so, but they're doing mail order. They're doing, they're
yeah.
mailing them to me. So I got 18 recently.
Yes,
That's
yeah. We
amazing.
have one local indie bookstore in two that are comic book stores, and I do not know. They're struggling, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's any kind of small business, anything that is retail
Mm-hmm.
is having problems now. Well, since we started talking about the comic, let's go into that. What got you moving from writing, the novels and the prose work, so to speak, and to move into comics? It can't have been easy.
Nope, it wasn't. And I'm still writing, novels and short stories. Short story came out a
Yeah.
few days ago,
Yep.
but I had wanted to write comics for a very long time and was um, practicing and asking people who make comics and just generally sort of um, trying to figure the medium out. And then got an email from Vertigo, which was still a thing back then, asking if I would want to pitch for one of the new books in a reboot of the Sandman universe. And I said, yes, please.
Yeah.
And they said, can you pull it together in a day? And I said, of course I can.
Oh my God.
So I pulled together a pitch that I probably will never ever show anyone now because it's thoroughly embarrassing. But and then they said, I heard nothing for a couple of weeks. So I asked them, and they said, well, it's taking a little longer than we thought. And I know what that means in publishing. It means let's assume the project's dead. So 2 years later, I heard from another editor at Vertigo saying, so are you still interested? And I said, I don't even know if you like my pitch. I'm still interested. But that's how that happened. It took about 2 years to come to fruition. And then I was writing a comic in the Sandman universe. So no pressure at all.
Yeah. I mean, oh my God. That's getting thrown in the deep end.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the most popular comics properties in North America. When we had a writers meeting in New Orleans where the four new writers of the four new books and the Vertigo folks and Neil, we all met for a weekend to talk over what we were going to do. And as I was flying back home, the last leg of the flight is a small one, usually from Dallas to Ontario, California. I had the older Sandman books and I was still reading to catch up. So I pulled one out of my bag. I was on book 6, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and a young man said, that was the last thing I expected you to pull out of your bag was a Sandman comic. And I couldn't tell him. I wasn't supposed to tell anyone.
Oh my God.
I just sat there for the whole flight thinking at him, just wait, just wait.
Just wait.
It gets better.
Yeah, because they've been doing some great stuff with the new Sandman universe stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's as good as it ever was.
Yeah, it's an amazing group of writers. I had not met Cy Spurrier or Dan Waters before, but liked them instantly. I knew Kat Howard because she was one of my students when I taught a Clarion writing workshop many years ago, and she's gone on to build her own career. So it was really cool to be part of this project that she was also part of.
Oh, that's so cool. And Dan Waters is like co-writing with you now
He
on the House of
co-wrote
Whispers.
issues either 5 or 6. I can't remember which. I think it's 5 through 13 or 14. What was happening? I have this full-time job, and I have fibromyalgia and ADD, and and I'm learning to write comics. So the first 2 issues I rewrote 8 times each. And so I was really struggling to get issues in on time and to figure out the medium and to figure out the sort of Vertigo House style and all of that stuff. So the editors, and there were 4 of them, emailed me and said, would you like a co-writer? And they did all kinds of framing around it. One of the most famous writers of Batman had a co-writer for the longest while. And I think they thought I was going to give them some ego. And all I said was, please, yes. Please, yes. And they suggested Dan, and Dan has been amazing to work with. Dan is also writing Lucifer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, right.
that the Lucifer's been a trip.
Yes, yeah. It's been mind blowing for sure. But he took on co-writing with me, and here's me in California and him in the UK, so 8 hours time difference. Trying to coordinate writing this comic, but I learned so much from him. He was just a boon and a blessing and a delight.
Because it's really different kind of writer muscles, I would think, that you use to write comics and to write novels and short stories and novellas and things. Because
Yeah.
it's kind of like maybe writing a teleplay or a screenplay or something.
Cross between that and a sonnet,
Wow.
because you're limited. It has to be exactly 22 pages each issue.
Yeah.
and
I hadn't thought of that, but yeah.
and not only that, that means you have to figure out. It took me a while to remember that the left hand side is always the even numbers. Because if you want to have a double page spread, or if you want to end a scene,
Oh my God.
right, you have to figure out where. So it's there's that, not just the pacing of the 22 pages, there's the format of the 22 pages. Yeah, very, very different muscles. If I'm going to hope my plotting has improved as a result, because a comic like this is all about plot, 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 um, but also making it have these character arcs and these story arcs and be emotionally gripping as well.
Yeah, and you've been doing the character arcs in House of Whispers have been great.
Thank you.
Even the smaller characters. I mean, Paquita, her arc has been astounding.
Oh, I love her. I love her so much.
She might be
And
my favorite character. I'm not sure. It keeps changing every time I read one.
and what was big fun too was every so often I got to have some of the original Sandman characters. I mean, original not to Sandman, but used originally in Sandman, if you see what I mean. So I got to have Cain and Abel. I got to have their gargoyles, who I probably like more than Cain and Abel actually. I got to have the Corinthian. Um,
Yeah.
Papa Midnight has come out of the John Constantine books to show up, as well as coming up with my own characters, and using characters from this sort of diaspora of uh, West African religious beliefs. It's so cool.
Yeah, that's been one of the things. And we've talked about this before. That's one of the things I love about your work is I'm always learning about the culture that I'm not from. And and I
Yeah.
love that. I, I, I don't need to read about me.
You and me both, because I mean these are gods I'm writing about, so their actions affect the whole world, which meant I had to do a lot of research. I had one section that I think was 2 pages that happens on an island off the coast of Japan, with the women divers there in one of the communities. And I wanted it to be in Japanese. Um, and I needed to go and learn about the culture of the women who get called pearl divers, but they do so much more. Um, and find somebody who understood fantasy and could also help me with the the Japanese. So always learning, always learning.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, it really is.
um, Now let's talk a little bit about the collaborative nature of writing comics, because
Mhm.
I find that fascinating. Because when you're in the process of the writing House of Whispers, writing, whichever one it is, when do you work with the artist to figure out the layouts, or do you write that in your descriptions and see what they do? How does that? I don't know how that works.
I think it really varies. The thing that was the most daunting, other than actually doing the writing, was that there is no set format for writing a comic script. um, DC and Vertigo and Marvel and the like have their own sort of house styles, but it is that even within that, there's a certain amount of flexibility. Um, in this case, it was being writer driven. So I or Dan and I would write the scripts. Then they go to the editors. Editors come back with their notes. We make any changes we deem to be good ones. Then it goes to the inker, who's Dominique Stanton, Domo Stanton, and he
Yeah,
decides the layouts and the, the, the he just makes the thing look. It has the energy it's going to have and the shapes it's going to have and the lines. And he does amazing things like he likes to use things as frames for the panels that you wouldn't expect. So I think there's at one point there's a skull that's a frame. There's an eye that's a frame.
that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. So then he does that. He does his pencils, I think they call it. There's comes back to me and to the editor. We make any suggestions. He does the inking. Then it goes to the colorist and the letterer, and then comes back at least twice, I think. While that's all happening, the editors have recruited. They've either asked me for they've asked me for my ideas about the cover because it's a different artist for most of the covers, have recruited the artists they think can do it, and they're working with that person to come up with their own um, vision for what that cover could be. So it's this huge collaborative process where, yes, there are instructions to the or suggestions to the all the artists, and I include the letterer in that because it's very much an artistic craft, lettering.
Yeah, I
Um,
hadn't realized that until relatively recently when I realized, and I forget which comic it was, how much the design of the word balloons and the lettering in it and all that
mhm.
helped define the characters.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until there is an interview somebody did with all of us, all the artists, where we took the first double page panel of House of Whispers and broke down what we'd done. So I got to read what I knew what Doma was doing, but I got to read what the colorist and the letterer were doing and realized how much I had underestimated how much they make the comic just as much as anybody else.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a beautifully collaborative medium. It really
mhm.
is. Do they ever suggest changes to you in terms of plot or story?
Yeah, yeah, we had to, and this was a challenge because at first of all, they wanted to know what the first 12 issues would be. And I said, I don't know, I haven't written them yet. And they said, no, but we need to know because we have to write advance copy and, give the bookstores some copy to sell the stuff with. Um, and I said, I don't know because I haven't written them yet. I write to find out what the story is going to be. I'm that kind of writer. And I'm now in a creative writing department in a university where a university views the creative practice as being the equivalent of research and experimentation on the science side. So you don't start out by knowing what you're going to do. At least I don't. So bless them, they kept trying to find other ways to get at the question, and I just
Yeah,
couldn't answer. And it was stressing me out horribly, and was probably stressing them out too. And I should mention that the editors have also been brilliant in all this. Um, so yes, they did very much make suggestions. But when it got down to me and Dan working, and we had to plot, they plot in six issue arcs, and then a 12 issue arc, and then a whole thing arc. Dan is excellent at that kind of brainstorming. So he would just make things bigger, and something that I had half thought through in my mind, he'd say, well, how about a Nancy? And then, oh my God, it has to be a Nancy.
oh my God, that arc with Anansi was astounding.
So much fun.
Oh, that that and visually it was great, and the stories and Urzuli, is that how you pronounce it?
Uh, yeah, Yazuli. It
Um, you
tends
know,
to be more of a stress on the final syllable, but
uh,
that'll work.
the way she kind of broke apart and
Yes, lots of things breaking apart. Uh,
yes,
I didn't meet Dombo until we were already on. We had already started working together. Had been working together for a few months, and I finally met him in person at Comic Con in 2018, and we were on panels together. And one of the things he said was that he likes drawing things that are just breaking up, like just smashing apart. So I would try to find a couple of times each issue where I could just break shit up, have things go flying, have things just discorporate.
keep the
Um,
artist happy.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Because a comic was not a comic without them,
Some
and
bam.
they have their own vision.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I've seen in the House of Whispers is the diversity you do, and not just because it's based on the diaspora, but you've got diversity in the colors, the shades of the people. They're not all dark. They're all different. The hairstyles are different, and you bring in all different body shapes, sexuality, all that stuff, and it all works. It makes
Thank
it
you,
such a it just makes it fuller.
thank you. I have been accused of sort of trying to play the diversity card when in fact I'm just writing the world the way Toronto looks,
Yeah,
and the way that my world looks. And it's very important to me to put different kinds of bodies and different sexualities and different genders and gender expressions, everything in as much as I can, because it makes it fuller. It means that you have to consider what people's lives are like. You have
yeah,
to, and it just makes it so much richer. And I knew in that first issue of House of Whispers, um, there are the children playing a ring game. Um, I knew that I wanted one of the children to be using a wheelchair, um, and to be active in the game just as much as the other children. It was very, very important to me, and to have one of the dancers on the runway um, be someone who doesn't have the lower half of one of his legs. And I remember telling Joe, I want a really dynamic line for this person's movement because they have such a huge range of motion because they can go onto their hands, they can hop, they can spin in midair, all of that. Um, it is very important to me to show, because like I said, the world looks like that. The world leaves out all our the stories that we get so often leave out all our particulars. Everybody, but very particularly people who are marginalized anyway. So I try to get at that specificity as much as I can. It brings a lot to the writing for me.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in 18, we're seeing Rafe
Yeah,
coming in, who's not
yeah,
just in a wheelchair but is trans,
yeah.
and
And a refugee who was
yeah,
kept in the camps, and yeah,
yeah. Oh, the what he called the refugee jail,
yes,
where
yeah,
he's hiding.
where he grew
That
up,
was
and
a that was like that whole those pages where Paquita comes in and meets him and all that some of that was just heartbreaking.
also a bit healing because they have
Yeah,
their own space and their own moment.
yeah, because when they get together and you've got the two of them kind of meeting, and there's a hope and almost a joy in it.
Yeah, it definitely was joyous. And there is a single panel. It's actually two panels, and I'm going to try not to be too spoilery. Um, where Rafe and Paquita are out in the desert camping. They've been sleeping. It's nighttime, and Rafe wakes up and realizes Paquita is gone. She's in trouble, and he's going to go get her. So first he has to lever himself into his chair, and then he's racing after her in this chair. So the line of his body that Domo did as he's pulling himself into the chair, I had to research how one does that. And then the image, that single image of him gonna go save his girlfriend, was so straight up superpower heroic that I burst into tears. It was
Oh.
just, I want that thing blown up, so I could put it on my wall.
That must be in 19 issue.
Yes, that sounds right.
All right, I
It's all
should get that.
it's
I
all
got something to look
blurring.
for. Speaking of Paquita, because her story is great, what she came from and the abuse she had, but she has the cat thing. Where did that come from? Is that something you made up, or is that part of the folklore?
It is part of the folklore. It's part of a bunch of folklores. So in Jamaica, they would call it a rolling calf. In Trinidad, they would call it lagahou, which is old Trinidad French Creole for loup-garou, so shapeshifter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like the Jamaican version, the rolling calf, which is a calf that's wearing death watch chains and has its eyes shine, and it's primarily what it does is it hunts down people who are out at night up to no good. But its alternate form is a cat with yellow eyes that likes to drink molasses. I could not make that up.
Well, you could, but you didn't.
And originally, I think there are a bunch of things that have combined from folklores from all the cultures that went into creolizing the Caribbean. The Irish puka seems to
Oh,
have
the puka.
elements, yeah,
I've heard of that.
of the rolling calf. Um, and there are even elements of the chupacabra that seem to come into it and mix. So once I decided I was going to have that creature, oh, so much fun to write. The moment where it shifts from cat into rolling calf, it's just.
And it takes care of Paquita and does some pretty nasty things to some bad people.
Yeah, it takes care of her in a very odd way because it's a carnivore.
Yeah.
It's supernatural and it's a hunter. And it has, well, the Corinthian has gotten mixed up in there. So,
Corinthian got mixed up in a lot of stuff.
pretty much, pretty much. So it is not a creature to be trifled with, but she doesn't know that.
Yeah.
She treats it on its own terms, and on her own terms. At one point, she has to sort of have a word with it. But I liked that idea of in that way she's an innocent Pukita. In many ways she isn't. The world has done so much to her that
Yeah.
she knows a lot about the evils the world can do. But when it comes to this creature that she's found and they're both looking after each other in a way, she's an innocent, so she has no fear. There's a moment when she realizes, oh, wait a minute, this thing could eat me, and I think it wants to. um, but they come to terms, and I loved writing the two of them as sort of being each other's sidekick almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And the cat thing, I'm not sure what else to call it.
yeah, I call it cat thing all the way through.
Yeah. It helped her find her strength,
Yeah,
really, because the way she had been treated her basically her whole life,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that she was able to find the strength to do what she did and to get out
Yes,
and to.
it did, and I don't think it even knew why it was going after her. It just knew her blood smelled good.
Yeah.
So there's that moment when I try to write in a few moments where you're not quite sure what's going to happen next, if the cat thing is going to be fully itself, and there are times where it does.
Yeah. Yeah. And you yourself had a pandemic in House of Whispers in a sense.
Yes, yeah.
The Cotard's delusion.
Yes, that was Neil's idea. That
Oh,
I mean, Cotard's delusion is a real thing, where people it's usually some form of brain damage where they become convinced they are dead, um, and in some cases that they are rotting, um, and so that's real. But in Neil's idea was that it would be kind of a psychic thing, and I forget who came up with the idea that it would be contagious. It's so many issues ago now. It might have been Neil originally.
it was a while ago.
It was a while ago, but yes, we have. There's a pandemic, um, and trying to write it, it took a lot of hard imagining for how it works and how it spreads, and um, because it even though it's contagious, it's a psychic contagion. It's
Yeah,
it's not a contagion of microbes going from one body to another.
it's like a
Um,
belief. It's a belief going from person to person, sort of.
it's a belief or something. I don't think we ever completely define what it is. Just that it has profound effects on people who catch it. Um, and yeah, that it. I sort of feel you and I were talking just before we started that the world is full of science fiction fantasy writers and full of scientists working on scientists, let's say scientists working on biology and contagion and infection. And haven't people been listening to us? I
Yeah,
wake up every day and I get angry because we've known for so long that this was coming.
yeah. And what I get afraid of too is with global warming and the ice packs melting, you don't know what's in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that used to be a science fiction premise that was way out there.
Yeah,
Remember when you're like, oh, they found something in the ice? Sure, they found something in the
the
ice. That could
thing.
never happen. Yeah, exactly. And now they're finding things in the ice.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to live in the books I write.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, little bits of them, sure, but
But
it
not,
should.
yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And you, the beginning of House of Whispers took place in New Orleans,
Mhm,
which is a place I love.
mhm.
And so, and it's a fascinating city. Um, it's kind of everything. You
It
know what I mean?
is, yeah, in both in the best and the worst ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's in there. And it's a, I thought, particularly now seeing where the book, the book, the comic went, the graphic novel went, it was a perfect place to start it in.
I had no sense of where I was going to start it until the bunch of us had this writers' room weekend in New Orleans, and I'd been to New Orleans once before, um, and being there again, I thought, wait a minute, this is where she's from. This is where this iteration of Ezuli is from. I mean, you can find versions of her all over the West African diaspora, but of course she's from New Orleans. And then had the idea to make, Neil said, there's a new house in the Dreaming and it's the House of Whispers. Had the idea to make it a houseboat because it's New
Yeah.
Orleans. And then Domo took it even bigger and made it one of those grand riverboats, where you can host a whole ball inside it, and there's chandeliers and people swinging from the lights, and uh, and that was completely him taking this idea as it grew and just making it huge. And so it meant that I now had a mobile house in the Dreaming. And boy, that was a mess to try and think through.
Yeah. And now there's some ghost ship going on and
Oh
you've
yeah.
got people seeing. I love the baby thing.
Yeah. Last summer, I was in Eindhoven in the Netherlands for a writing workshop. Um, and the summer before that, I was in Amsterdam. No, it was the winter before that. I was in Amsterdam briefly for a science fiction conference. Um, and I'm quite fascinated with the Netherlands, particularly being somebody who has ancestry from Guyana, which at one point was owned um, uh, by those folks. And Georgetown, Guyana's main city, has water channels cut into it. Not pretty like the ones because they immediately went tropical, and now they're full of black sludge and fish that are going feet as fast as they can to try and walk out of there. Um, but yes, I'm fascinated with the history of the Netherlands, and it is such a rich because it's always been waterways, it's always been ports. It's such a rich, both glorious and very troubled history. And so I got to put the little baby in, and I love the idea of the baby being the only one who sees what's going on, and he's trying hard to tell them.
He does
But
say boat at one point.
he does very softly, but his poor parents are so underslept looking after him. They just want to go home and have some breakfast.
Yeah. Now, Urzuli,
Mm.
Urzuli, that's an actual real uh, Loa.
Yes, Erzuli Freda Maîtresse Mambo. Erzuli Frida Maîtresse Mambo. Mambo being a type of, let's say, people will say voodoo. That's how it would be understood in North America. So I'll use the term, but the term gets misused here. But yes, she is, and she has her own house. Uh, so yes, she is an actual Loa, and she has her own iteration coming out of New Orleans.
Mm. And three husbands.
Three husbands. It's my girl. She's holding it down. Three husbands
Yeah.
who are themselves gods.
Yeah.
She does not mess around, and I wanted the relationship amongst the four of them to be a good marriage. Um, they love and revere each other, and I mean, it's a marriage, so they fight, and they have moments where they're estranged and they're not getting along too well. But I also wanted there to be I didn't want it to be. This is another aspect of writing the unexpected. In that kind of situation, I'm almost expected to write a bunch of jealous people, having drama at each other. Um, but I didn't want it to be that. I wanted it to be a marriage and a pretty
Yeah.
good marriage. Yeah.
And all the husbands love each other too.
Yeah. They think of themselves as co husbands.
Yeah.
And they are, they care for each other.
Yeah.
Um, and that ended up being fun to write too, especially when the relationship goes south, and I know they're gonna, I'm not spoiling it, when the relationship goes south, as
I
fiction
know. Yeah.
does.
Yeah. And I love that the husbands are all trying to help.
Yeah, yeah, they want to get their brother back.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
their 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 husband-in-law is the other term they use for each
Yeah.
other.
So I got to tell you, I love the way Urzuli looks too. So when you next talk to Domo, tell him there's somebody out there that just adores the way he has her look.
Nice.
All the different looks of her when she's powerful and angry, and it's just it's a
Yes.
great character the way it's written, the way it's drawn.
Thank you. I knew I wanted her to have gravitas. She's a good 7, 8 foot tall. She's a deity,
Yeah.
and I wanted her to have power. And I did not want her to be. There's some versions in which, in parts of the story in which she is thin, and still has her power and her grace. But I wanted Erzuli Freda to be a thick woman. I wanted her to have some mass to her. Um, because sometimes she's a mermaid, and a skinny mermaid is a cold mermaid. So she has some body fat on her, and I wanted her to be femme, high femme, but she's also a warrior. So although she wears combat boots, they are pink and glittery, but she'll kick your ass.
Yes. Yes, she will. You have many women in House of Whispers and in kind of all of your books who will kick your ass.
I do, I do, and occasionally children.
Yes.
the the, uh, the youngest sister, um, who sort of stumbles into the youngest sister of the humans from New Orleans, who stumbles into this whole mess. I wanted to give her her own moments of power as well, because children have so little. That I love writing those moments when they can have their own power and their own wisdom. Um, and that was also fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been like almost 45 minutes we've been
Wow.
talking. So probably ought to think about wrapping it up. I know you've got more stuff to do than sit here and just jabber with me.
This is so much fun, though.
I love it. I love hanging out with you.
Thank you, like you too.
And I can't wait for the comics to get into the store, Big Planet Comics in Vienna, Virginia, to get me their to get my new comics when they come in, which should have, I guess, 19 and maybe 20.
Yeah, they should.
I'm hoping.
Yeah,
so that'll be fun.
20 with that amazing cover. I think is either out or about to be out.
And probably another Lucifer or two. And
yes, and I know that the Dreaming Cy Spurrier's one just wrapped up, and I think Howard's Timothy Hunter just wrapped up as well.
Cool. Yeah. So I should be getting all those.
Yes.
Those are so good.
They are.
There's a lot of good comics out there, and I've seen a lot of the writers that I knew from their books that are doing it. I mean, you and Saladin Ahmet.
Yes.
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yes.
His Black Panther stuff has been amazing.
Yeah.
And your Wakandan outfits. Oh my God.
I have 2 more to go. The hardest one still to go.
You people have to go find her on Twitter. She tweets when she does this. She thinks of it as cosplay, but to me, it's Wakandan fashion.
Well, I was supposed to be a guest at WonderCon in April, and of course they had to cancel it. But I was still sewing my costumes, so I finished the 2 that were closest to being finished. And hopefully during the summer I'll be able to finish the remaining 2.
You put those on, you are a queen.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really tall hats. You sort of have to hold yourself like one.
And are you still creating your material, your cloth?
Yeah, I am on spoonflower.com, Nalo_Hopkinson. I create designs.
We'll get all of the links for all of your stuff, your social media, your Patreons, all of that, and we'll put it down in the comments below. So look for that so everyone can find all your stuff and the crafts you do.
Yeah, for sure. That has to wait till summer now that I'm teaching, but every so often an idea gets under my skin and I have to at least start it. Yep.
Yeah, it's been so much fun.
Thank you.
And so this is Mike Zipser from Fast Forward reminding you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video and click on the bell so you can find out when we do more of these. We got more coming up. And Nalo, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Taking the time to visit with us from Riverside, California.
This has been wonderful.
Yeah. So from all of us here at Fast Forward, take care, stay safe, stay at home.